Hello. If you know me, you know that I love pelicans, specifically the pelicans at Edinburgh Zoo. Here are some very unflattering photos that a friend took of me showing you just how much I love pelicans. I've taken hundreds of reference photos of these guys over the past 2 years, and recently I've been back again, and guess what? Taken more photos of the exact same pelicans because that's just how much I love them. For today's sketchbook spread, I'm using the Tobios travel watercolor set that was gifted to me by my younger sister for Christmas this year. Very kind of her. It comes with a lot of colors, actually. A little clip, a water brush, a magnetic tiny little palette that is awfully cute and I rather enjoy it. And the best part is it comes with a watercolor block of sorts. It's like a sketchbook block filled with watercolor paper. And it's tiny and it's great and I love the shape and size of it. I also end up using a Nick Pro Round 3mm hair stroke brush, a Staedtler just standard HB pencil that I'm using for sketching, as well as one of the Hoo Hoo acrylic paint markers, the black version of what I used in the last video, for cat whiskers. And on top of it, I used my standard Pigma Micron fine liner pens in 10 and 01 as well. The paper in this block is really nice to draw on, really nice. It's good with cheap pencils, it's good with expensive pens, and as you'll see later on, I really enjoyed splashing some watercolor around on this as well. My only very minor flaw with it is it does curl up a little bit with the paint. That is pretty standard. And it's not the thickest watercolor paper on the planet, so it's kinda to be expected. Whenever I use watercolors, I always use CYMK as a base, and then whatever other colors I need on top of that. So in this case, that's the yellow, blue, pink, and black, as well as a little bit of white and orange, just to get the sort of tonal values that I need, and a bit of red later on. In particular, I tend to lean towards blue and yellow, because I find that if you use this as like a base layer for your highlights and shadows, it just looks really good. And yeah, with watercolors, I gotta admit, I always struggle to like get the contrast that I want, so I tend to lean away from them on their own. But with the addition of this blue and yellow, it gives your shadows and your highlights really interesting sort of blends of colors. Watercolors are see-through, so as you layer other stuff on top of these colors, you preserve the integrity of the base tones that they have, and cold colors recede and hot colors proceed. So if you want to make something look more 3D and like it's sticking out at you, if you put some yellow underneath whatever color you want it to be, it'll still look like orange or blue or whatever, but with that yellow undertone, it will make it stick out further to the eye than without. And the same goes with blue. So if you use blue under things, or purple even, cool colors, it'll push those things back. I start off all of my watercolor paintings doing exactly what I'm doing here. I always start with the yellow to get those big lumpy pieces that I want in the foreground to stick out. Also, these guys have a natural sort of sulfur crest to their chest, so their chests are yellow. So it kind of is a bit of a double win there. I do this before the blue usually because I find it easier to blend the blue into the yellow than vice versa. Don't know why. It's just force of habit at this point. And I go in with a really thin wash of these two colours to begin with, just so I don't overwhelm things. In the past, I've gone in quite heavy-handed and tried to like block in the darkest of dark bits first, and it always comes out kind of looking a bit chalky and a bit rubbish. You gotta kind of take your time with watercolors. You gotta let them dry from time to time as well, which I'm not a huge fan of, which is why I tend to lean more towards acrylics. But I do love the blends that you get with watercolors. Although I ended up quite enjoying this blue when it was layered up later on, my God, I had to work hard to get any payoff from it whatsoever. I don't know what it was about this blue in particular, but it was basically transparent. It did end up blending really beautiful purples later on, though, using the pink in the palette. I didn't actually use the pure purple itself because I wanted portions of the undertones and any other colours that I was mixing up, just for a bit of consistency throughout the painting. So let's talk pelicans. Edinburgh Zoo is home to specifically Eastern White Pelicans, which are also known as rosy pelicans, white pelicans, the great white pelican, or Pelicanus onocrotalis. This is quite a widespread family that can be found throughout southeastern Europe, Asia, and Africa. Not so much in the UK, unfortunately. Pretty much anywhere where there's fish, so like swamps, shallow lakes, but also certain coastlines, you can probably find a pelican. According to the IUCN Red List, their current status is that of least concern, which is kind of what we want all animals to be in, unfortunately, but not always the case. And they are currently the second biggest pelican. The only bigger one is the Dalmatian pelican, but these guys can grow up to 180 centimeters in length. Their beaks or bills can grow to almost 50 centimeters, which is actually massive if you think about how big the bird is. And they are also famous for having a very big wingspan. Their wingspan can go up to, at its highest record, 360 centimeters. The only bigger wingspan in extant flying animals at the moment is known to the great albatross, which is massive. From seeing them on the zoo against myself, I would say the average pelican kind of stands a bit above hip height on me. Bigger than most big dogs. I would say bigger than a German Shepherd, but not as long. But my favorite part of these pelicans has gotta be their big yellow gular pouches. What is a gular pouch? It's that big dangly thing that hangs off the bottom of their beaks that they store food in. Pelicans use these almost like a net or a bucket. They run their beaks through large areas of water to catch whatever fish or food they can within their beaks, and they store them for a little bit inside their gular pouches to filter out both water and just to sort of sense whether or not this is something that's good to eat. I find this pouch particularly interesting because often in artwork, pelicans are kind of depicted with having this pouch out all the time. Really, pelicans don't get the gular pouch out very often. It's expandable, so when they're not using it, it's kind of tucked away. and they have a tendency to sort of nestle their heads into their chests when they're just hanging out. And you can't really see the pouch at all most of the time, so it is kind of a special thing when you do get to see it. But on top of scooping up fish and storing water and even, you know, draining and filtering water in their pouches, they also use this to hold their young on occasion, to transport their chicks from one place to another. And they even use it to fan themselves on hot days. They sort of flap them around like crazy to circulate the air to cool down their bodies. And I think that's pretty interesting. If all of this wasn't interesting enough, there is also a behavioral thing that I really enjoy about pelicans. I'm a bit morbid. I like it when animals do something kind of unexpected. And one of the things you might not necessarily know about pelicans if you haven't been living in an area with them commonly is they also eat other birds. They tend to prefer fish, and if they're well fed, pelicans won't resort to this behavior. If they're able to hunt food pretty easily, they'll just stick with the good old food source that they're used to. But these are opportunistic hunters. So if food sources are low, pelicans will resort to eating other birds' chicks, sometimes their own chicks, as well as common birds like pigeons and even seagulls, which are pretty big. It gives you an idea of the scale of these animals. They have also been known to steal food from people on occasion and also eat things like reptiles as well. Considering this hostile behavioral trait, I have never experienced anything other than the utmost calm from these birds when I've gone to see them in the zoo myself. Apart from one time when they were being fed, but that was just them going ballistic because they were getting really excited about fish. But 99% of the time, they're either huddled up in the bottom corner of their enclosure in a massive pink pile, or they're doing little laps, like those photos of me at the start. That's the top of their enclosure and a good spot to see them from. They also just have kind of the sweetest little faces on the planet. They're very likable birds. I don't know how to explain that in any better way, but I've gotten pretty close up to them quite a few times, and they just have the loveliest eyes. And they're just big silly billies. They're big goofy guys. Whenever they act out, it's pretty funny. And I think they're a very underappreciated animal at the zoo. Everyone goes for the tigers, which I totally get, so do I. But these guys are just darling. When I use my fine liners, I try and use a combination of pen widths, I guess you would call it. So for this, I'm using a 10 and an 01, which is one of the thickest and thinnest of these particular Pigma microns that you can get. The reason I do that is I like to create a definition between my outlines and my sort of detail marks. I find that I really enjoy using heavier outlines, even with a black background like this. Part of the reason why I've done this on black, by the way, is to really emphasize how pale these birds are. But also their enclosure is actually pretty dark. Not dark because they got the lights off, but it's just got a lot of trees in it, a lot of dark water, and when you see them, they do stand out in their enclosure pretty much how I've drawn them because of all these dark backgrounds that they're on. This is quite a loose way of drawing for me. Normally I would sit down and draw every single feather. I don't want to do that with these guys because they're so pale. I feel like if you did every single feather, like every little mark, it would actually make them look way too dark in a way, and you'd lose some of the sort of natural glow that they have. Also, this is a sketchbook. This isn't a final fine art piece or a bigger painting like I did in the last video. This is just a little doodly sketchbook, kind of for myself, to be honest, more than anything. And I kind of want to start documenting things I've been seeing in person in my own way. I feel like I've spent the last year trying to, I guess, appease lecturers, guess what people want to see on Instagram and all of that. This is literally just to, I don't know, please me. This is purely for myself, drawing exactly what I want, how I want to do it, and I love how this turned out because of it. I don't know why it's about watercolors, but I always find that they look better with just a little bit of pencil over them at the end. Doesn't have to be the most intensive shading in the world. I just personally struggle to get the contrast that I want with watercolors, even when I spend much more time on it than I have with this piece today. If anyone has any advice on that, let me know. If it's buying more expensive watercolors, I'm probably not going to do that because I like to keep my materials quite affordable. Albeit, this was a gift, so I didn't spend anything on it. I'm pretty pleased with how these cutie patooties turned out. I think for the next spread, I might do something lighter, maybe a gravy zebra, perhaps. Let me know down in the comments below what you'd like to see next. And if you've been to Edinburgh Zoo, what's your favourite animal that they have there?